Well, hello, friends. I hope you're having a great day today. Happy Hump Day to you. Welcome to Wednesday. Welcome to another edition of Take 5 and to the subject we've been talking about for many weeks now. That subject is entitled Living by Faith. Yesterday we stopped at verse 38, and I love what that verse said. It said their faith was so grand that the world was not even worthy of them. That's how God saw them. These people were greatly flawed, but their faith was greater than their flaws, and it made the world unworthy of them. God, think about it. God so esteemed the lives of those men and women of faith that He said the world doesn't even deserve their example and the sacrifice that they made. The world's not even worthy of them. That's how much God esteems a life of truly committed faith. And that's the faith that He wants us to have. He wants that same faith to be alive in us today. Let's move on. We're going to try to do verse 39 and 40 today. Verse 39 said, "And all these having obtained a good testimony through faith." That goes without saying. God just said the world's not worthy of them, so they received a great commendation from heaven about their faith. All these having obtained a good testimony through faith still did not receive the promise. They had this great commendation of how awesome their faith was, yet they did not receive the promise. Think about that. They were commended because they died with such strong faith. They never received it, but were still commended for their faith. That's something that we need to be striving for. I think we focus a little too much on getting the promise instead of focusing on just how great our faith and consecrated our faith should be. That's what God's looking at. God's not worried about the promise. God will get the promise there. He'll do that. He is looking at our faith. And so He says, all these received a great commendation, even though they never received the promise. They all heard the promise that Abraham got of the Messiah, because this was their constant tradition carried out from generation to generation. 42 generations actually until Christ actually came on the scene. They never saw this. They just heard about this Jesus who was going to be the expectation of all nations, and they held on to that promise with an awesome faith, a faith that couldn't be detoured, a faith that couldn't be distracted, a faith that could not be destroyed by anything. That's how awesome their faith was. They held on. In fact, they never saw it, but they held on anyway to their faith. Verse 40, God having provided something better for us. Now, I've been telling you since the beginning of this series that we've got to see ourselves in the text, and now we're about to see where the writer begins to actually talk about us. God having provided something better for us, that's those Old Testament saints, should not be made perfect apart from us. Now, I know you're wondering how could God and how did God provide something better for us? It's really simple. They waited for His coming, but we get to enjoy the coming of Jesus. We get to enjoy that because He's already come. We're on this side of His birth and His death and His resurrection. We're on this side of it. We get to enjoy Him as having already come, and they were waiting for Him to come. They only heard about Jesus and faithfully waited with patience. We, on the other hand, we get to experience this Jesus living in us by the Spirit firsthand. They had a type and a foreshadowing. We have the manifestation. That's how it's better for us. I'm thankful for the new covenant. I really am. I'm thankful that there was a time in God's divine plan when He made a shift through Christ and did something better for us, those of us on this side of the cross. Now, make sure you understand something. I'm about to tell you something about Old Testament saints versus New Testament saints, and I want you to make sure you know who Old Testament saints are. That's every person that lived their life for God, that served God faithfully, and died a godly person before Calvary. That's every person before Calvary. That's an Old Testament saint. Every person that died with faith in God before Calvary, that's an Old Testament saint. New Testament saints, that's every person that has been born again since Calvary and have died or are still living like you and me today. That's New Testament saints, and we need to understand the difference, because he said he provided something better for us, that they should not be made perfect apart from us. Now, we need to understand that idea, that promise to be made eternally perfect or glorified is what we understand it better as from the New Testament. It's given to everyone, Old Testament saint and New Testament saint alike, and it will happen when we are resurrected. Now, there appears to be some passages of Scripture. Listen real closely right here now. There appears to be some passages of Scripture, Job 19, 25 to 27, Daniel 12, 1 and 2, Revelation 6, and then chapter 7, and then chapter 20. There are several passages of Scriptures that seem to refer to the fact that Old Testament saints will not be resurrected until the end of the tribulation. Now, if that's the case, and the Bible really seems it points that direction, then that would be very fitting. Because the tribulation is referred to as the time of Jacob's trouble or Israel's trouble. And so that would be very fitting for them to be raised at the end of the tribulation along with the tribulation saints that are born again during that time. That would be very fitting. On the other hand, every person born again since Calvary, we are going to be resurrected at an event called the rapture. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, 13 through 18 talks about that. We're going to be resurrected then, and we're going to be glorified then and given our new body to go with that perfect spirit and that perfect soul. We're going to be given a new body, and then we will be perfect body, soul, and spirit. So the faith that these people of the old covenant had, we've talked about their faith for some time. We need to begin to try to understand why we need to make the connection with our lives to them. They were the example for us, and yet we got the better end of the deal, yet theirs is the example we're supposed to follow. They were proof that a genuine life of faith in the face of extreme adversity is absolutely possible. And that's the life and the example that we should follow. I thank God that we got in on the better end of this thing, but I also thank God even more for the example of faith that these men and women in the old covenant lay down for us, so that you and I can live that life of faith and understand that if they did it in that era, and then surely we can do it in our era when something better has been promised for us. Well, hey, I've got to get out of here. It's been good being with you today. I look forward to being with you tomorrow on Thursday's edition of Take 5. Until then, God bless you. Have a great day. Remember, friend, trust the Lord. He will never fail you.